everyone and welcome to this fly tying video. Today we're going to tie a small mayfly emerger here on a size 18, but you could tie this up to a size 12 or even bigger depending on what kind of mayfly you want to imitate, and also change the colors to exactly what you have in your waters. The hook I'm using is the Hends BL 454 size 18, and this is a standard wire dry fly hook, and the thread I'm using is the Nanosilk from Semperfli. 80 knot works really well on these small sizes and in olive, and here you can change up the color depending on what materials you're using. So I'm going to start right behind the eye, and I'm going to put down a layer of thread. About midpoint I'm going to cut off the excess and then take it down a few turns more, just to about where the barb is on a hook with barb. And here we're going to tie in the tails, and as most mayflies have 3 tails, I'm going to tie in 3 strands of this pheasant tail. You could also tie in 4 or 5. The idea here is to keep it quite sparse, especially on the smaller sizes. So here I've taken off 3 fibers, put them 90 degrees from the stem, then tear them off, and you should have all the tips aligned. And here the length of this is about half the length of the hook, so I'm going to tie this in, holding it with my left hand, then 1 turn over, 2 turns quite loose, and then you can pull these to length. And once you're happy, I'm then going to do 1 turn underneath, and this is going to splay out the fibers, and in about the perfect shape, the 2 on the sides going out to the sides and the 1 staying in the middle, and then 2 turns just to secure. Next is the rib, and here I'm using some ultra wire, this one in the size small and in Chartreuse, and this is just going to give a little extra to the fly, just a little bit of shimmer, giving the appearance of some life. And here I'm going to tie this in the whole length of the body, and this should be 2/3 of the hook. And here 1 turn just to secure, and for now we can leave it hanging here on the side, and we're going to put on some dubbing and covering the whole body. For the dubbing I'm using this Hends Hare dubbing, and this is in a light olive color. And here the idea is to keep this quite sparse, as well as with the tail fibers. So you don't have to put on much, you just want to barely cover the thread. And then we're going to take this up, and at the same time as we build up the body, we're going to secure both the wire and the tail fibers. And here we're going to make a slight taper going from the back to the front. And once we reach the 2/3 point of the hook, we can stop, and here we're going to cut off the pheasant tail. And now we're going to bring up the rib, and here, as for all the other materials, we're going to keep this quite sparse, so just a few turns up the body is all we need. And then once we reach the thread, we put a 90-degree bend into the wire and then tie it down. And now we can just helicopter this wire to break it off. In these small sides it's quite easy to break it off. And now we have the body done. The next thing is to tie in both the wing buds, the wing case, and all this is going to be one material, and is some CDC. So here I have some natural black CDC, and I've taken a single feather. I'm going to have it in the point towards the back, and here with my fingers I'm going to gather as much of the fibers as I can, and holding it like this I'm going to tie it in right where the body stops. So one turn, two turns over, quite loose, as we're going to pull this feather. So here I'm keeping it with my left hand and I'm pulling with my right hand, just to make sure it stays right on top. And here we want these to extend a little bit past the half point of the body. And then we can make a few turns to tie this down. We're going to go up right to the eye. Then we're going to bend back the feather. I'm trying to keep this as on the top as possible. We're going to tie this down, going back again. And this is going to bulk up the thorax a little bit and also help with the shape of the fly. Next we're going to tie in the thorax material, and here I'm using some Hare's ear in olive. And this is going to have some little spikier hairs in it, so it's going to represent the legs. And here, to do this, I'm going to use the split thread technique. So spin your bobbin counterclockwise, and it's going to flatten the thread. Then with a dubbing needle we can come in and split it in two, and then keep the loop open. Then I'm taking the dubbing and I'm going to insert just a little bit at a time. And here we want to keep this sparse as well. So just a few fibers like this, then close the loop. We can start spinning in just a little bit between the fingers. This is going to secure the fibers a little bit. Then spin your bobbin clockwise again. This is going to cord the thread and trap all these fibers in between, and it's going to make this nice little chenille with a lot of spiky fibers sticking out. Once we have enough turns, bring them up and bring up the bobbin, and then we're going to build up the thorax, and as we go I'm going to pull back any fibers that want to go forward, and this is to keep the eye as clean as possible. On these smaller hooks it's really necessary to try to keep the eye as open as possible. If you do not do this, it's going to be quite impossible to tie on the fly once you're on the river. So now we have the thorax, and I'm just going to make the hairs go a little bit on each side as we're going to pull over the CDC feather and make a wing case. And here we're going to pull over the feather over the thorax, and then just to turn right behind the eye, and then 2 more to secure, and then we're going to bring back the end, trying to keep the eye as clean as possible, and then a few turns right in front, and this is going to push up this little end so it stays at about 45-degree angle from the hook shank. And here the last thing to do is to do a whip finish, and I'm just going to do this right behind the eye. 3 turns, then pull tight. Then reach in with your scissors and we can cut this off. And then what I like to do on these flies is to cut off this end at about just a millimeter or so, and this is going to make a nice little head on the fly. And then to secure the head, I'm going to add just a tiny drop of glue, or in this case a little bit of varnish. And then make sure you have no glue inside the eye. And there we have the Small Mayfly Emerger. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time, and happy time.